Welcome back to Without Shortcuts. Today we are making pie crust.
Pie crust should be buttery and flaky and delicious, but something that's definitely not flaky is you reaching down, subscribing to our channel, and definitely giving this video a quick thumbs up.
Right. We all know how easy it is to go down to the grocery store, grab a pie crust out of the freezer section, but we're going to show you today that with, a half a dozen or so ingredients, you can put together your own pie crust that's going to be so much better than anything that you're going to get out of the store. Now, this is a recipe that you can use in a sweet or a savory pie. If you're going to do a savory pie like a pot pie or something, just eliminate the sugar.
So when you're making pie crust, generally speaking, the idea with using butter versus shortening, the butter is going to be a little bit richer, and using shortening, you're going to get a little bit of a more flaky crust. So we're going to use 50% on both of them. Now, the other thing we're going to do that's a little different is we're going to use 50% chilled water, and we're going to use 50% vodka. Now, the reason that we're using the vodka is because, kind of like we've talked about in our biscuit recipes, whenever you're working with flour, there's the potential for developing gluten, which is going to develop more readily when you're using water. So by using vodka, which is 40% alcohol, you're actually going to inhibit some of that gluten production, which is going to make your crust that much flakier, but at the same time, you'll still be able to work with it because you'll have the moisture in it. And then when you put the whole thing in the oven, that alcohol is going to bake off, so you're not going to have any of the effects from the alcohol in the crust itself. It's just going to give you a really nice texture and a really good pie crust altogether that's easy to work with.
Now that we've got all the words out of the way, let's go ahead and make a pie crust. So we're going to use the food processor for this. So we're going to add the first part of our flour. All right, and then that's going to go in with sugar and salt. And then we're going to just pulse this a couple of times just to get everything mixed together. All right, and then next, we're going to throw in all of our butter and all the shortening. And again, like Doug said, all of this stuff is cold. It just came out of the freezer. So once that is in there, we're just going to turn on the food processor, let it process for 20 or so seconds, just so we don't heat it up, but just enough to kind of make it into a paste. All right. So that just kind of helps get all the butter incorporated into everything. Then we're going to add the last part of our flour. We're going to grab a spatula, scrape down the sides real quick just to make sure nothing is sticking. Just like that. Okay. And then we're going to pulse this again, a half dozen times or so just to make sure the rest of that flour gets mixed in. And there we go.
So once that's ready, we're going to take and pour that from our food processor into a mixing bowl. And then from here, we're just going to pour our water and our vodka over the top of it and kind of start incorporating it in. And then once that's close, I'm gonna lightly flour my work surface here. And I'm gonna pour this out onto the work surface and then just start forming it into a ball. And you can see it's still kind of crumbly, but that's exactly where you want it. You want it to be just on the edge of not staying together, and yet all staying together.
This recipe is enough to make a double crust pie. So like if you were going to make an apple pie with a top crust, you'd use this whole thing. Or you can use it to make 2 single crust pies, which is what we're going to do today. So we're going to divide this in half, and then half of that we're going to roll up and put into the freezer, and then that'll stay in the freezer. It'll stay good for a month or so. We're gonna go ahead and we'll just kind of shape this into a disc, and then that'll just get wrapped up.
For this portion of crust, we're actually going to use this to make a pumpkin pie, which will be our video for next week. But this still needs to rest for at least a half an hour or so before we can use it. So while we put that one in the freezer to use for another dish later on, we're going to take this one, wrap it up the same way, throw it in the refrigerator, and let it rest for half an hour.
So there are a lot of different nuances and different techniques for making pie crust. It's a controversial thing for sure. So let us know what your recipe is, what your past experiences have been, and if you've never made one like this before, give it a try. Let us know down in the comments how it goes for you. You know, hit us up on Instagram and Twitter, and until next time, let's get the shortcuts.
All right, thanks guys.